Hello children. In this video lecture, I will explain you chapter of Flamingo, chapter 4, The Rattrap, written by Selma Lagerlof. Let's know about the author. Selma Ottilia Lovisa Lagerlof was a Swedish author and teacher whose stories have been translated into many languages. She published her first novel, Gosta Berling's Saga, at the age of 33. She was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature, which she was awarded in 1909. Additionally, she was the first woman to be granted a membership in the Swedish Academy in 1914. A universal theme runs through all her stories, a belief that the essential goodness in a human being can be awakened through understanding and love. Let's know about the chapter. The Rat Trap is based on the theme that the essential goodness is a human being can be awakened through understanding and love. The story is set amidst the iron mines of Sweden, rich in iron ore, which figure large in the history and legends of that country. The author has beautifully brought out human loneliness and the need of bond with others. The story is told somewhat in the manner of a fairy tale. Let's know about the characters. The paddler, a poor man who sold red traps for a living and was a pet thief. The crofter, a simple trusting person who is robbed by the paddler. The ironmaster, a stern taskmaster and law abiding person, he trusts the paddler due to his daughter's persuasion. Edla, the ironman's daughter, is a kind and compassionate lady. Children, in this slide, I have given the expressions which is used in the text with its meaning. Write down this in your notebook. Let's start explanation of the chapter. Once upon a time, there was a man who went around selling small red traps of wire. He made them himself at odd moments from the material he got by begging in the stores or at the big farms. But even so, the business was not especially profitable, so he had to resort to both begging and petty thievery to keep body and soul together. Even so, his clothes were in rags, his cheeks were sunken, and hunger gleamed in his eyes. Once upon a time, a man used to make small rat traps. He made this during strange time of the day. These were made of wire. He used to roam around to sell this. He used to beg for the material in stores or at big farms. Though he got material free, still his business of selling red trap did not give him enough money. So he had to beg and do minor thefts to make living. Yet his clothes were torn, his cheeks were sunk, he appeared hungry or malnourished. No one can imagine how sad and monotonous life can appear to such a vagabond who plods along the road left to his own meditations. But one day this man had fallen into a line of thought which really seemed to him entertaining. He had naturally been thinking of his red trips when suddenly he was struck by the idea that the whole world about him, the whole world with its lands and seas and its cities and villages was nothing but a big red trap. It had never existed for any other purpose than to set baits for people. It offered riches and joys, shelter and food, heat and clothing, exactly as the red trap offered cheese and pork. And as soon as anyone let himself be tempted to touch the bait, it closed in on him, and then everything came to an end. Life of the red trap maker was sad and dull. He did not have a home. He used to walk along the road and live on side of road. Mostly he was busy in his own thoughts, meaning that his thoughts were not affected by anyone. He had no one to talk to. One day, a new thought came to his mind. This new thought appeared very pleasant to him. As usual, he was thinking about his rat traps. Suddenly, a thought came to him. He thought that the whole world was a big rat trap, meaning that all the people are trapped in this world. The world exists to tempt people into doing something. The world gives us many pleasures like money, happiness, home, food, clothes, etc. This is similar to a rat trap having cheese and pork to tempt rats. As soon as a person tries to get any of the pleasure of the world, he gets trapped to obtain more such pleasures. Then he is not able to come out of ever increasing desire. The world had, of course, never been very kind to him, so it gave him unwanted joy to think ill of it in this way. It became a cherished pastime of his during many dreary ploddings to think of people he knew who had let themselves be caught in the dangerous snare, and of others who were still circling around the bait. Certainly, the world was not kind to him, meaning that he had lot of difficulties in his life. Therefore, this thought gave him special happiness to think bad about the world. This became his favorite thought to pass his time. During his dull and boring walks, he used to think of people known to him who were caught in the dangerous trap of the world. He also used to think of people who were still moving around the temptations. This line means that they had not fully decided to get tempted but were about to get into a trap. One dark evening, as he was trudging along the road, he caught sight of a little grey cottage by the roadside, and he knocked on the door to ask shelter for the night. Nor was he refused. Instead of the sore faces which ordinarily met him, the owner, who was an old man without wife or child, was happy to get someone to talk to in his loneliness. Immediately he put the porridge pot on the fire and gave him supper. Then he carved off such a big slice from his tobacco roll that it was enough both for the stranger's pipe and his own. Finally, he got out an old pack of cards and played majorless with his guest until bedtime. One day it became dark in the evening and he was still walking with difficulty along the road. He saw a small hut of grey color. He knocked at the door and requested permission to stay there. He was given the permission. Normally, red trap maker used to meet bad-tempered persons, but owner of this cottage was happy to receive him. The owner was an old person. He lived there alone. He did not have his wife or children at the cottage. He was happy to receive red trap maker so that he could walk to him to remove his loneliness. Immediately, the cottage owner started cooking porridge, a dish of oatmeal. He served dinner to the red trap maker, and then he cut a big piece of tobacco from a roll. With this red trap maker and the cottage owner each could smoke their pipes. Then they played a game majorly with playing cards. The old man was just as generous with his confidences as with his porridge and tobacco. The guest was informed at once that in his days of prosperity his host had been a crofter at Ramschow ironworks and had worked on the land. Now that He was no longer able to do any labor. It was his cow which supported him. Yes, that Possie was extraordinary. She could give milk for the creamery every day, and last month he had received all of 30 kroner in payment. The old man, the owner of the cottage, voluntarily told him many of his secrets. This was similar to giving shelter and lot of food to his guests. Rattrap maker was informed that in past the cottage owner was a rich person. He had taken a piece of land on rent at Ramsjo ironworks and used to live and do farming on that land. Now the crofter was not able to do hard work. His cow was supporting him, and he said that his cow was extraordinary. She used to give him milk every day. He sold that milk to creamery. That factory makes cheese and butter. Last month he had received 30 kronor. This kronor is a currency of Sweden, children, from the creamery. The stranger must have seemed incredulous, for the old man got up and went to the window, took down a leather pouch which hung on a nail in the very window frame, and picked out three wrinkled 10 kroner bills. This he held up before the eyes of his guest, nodding knowingly, and then stuffed them back into the pouch. The old man thought that the guest did not believe him. Because of this reason, the owner of the house went to the window. He looked down and took a leather pouch that was hanging on a nail on the window frame. He took out three 10 kroner notes from the pouch and showed to the Rattrap maker. These were folded at many places. The old man showed these currency notes to his guest. Then he put this back into the pouch. The next day, both men got up in good season. The crofter was in a hurry to milk his cow, and the other man probably thought he should not stay in bed when the head of the house had gotten up. They left the cottage at the same time. The crofter locked up the door and put the key in his pocket. The man with the red wrap said goodbye and thank you, and thereupon each went his own way. Next day, both men got up early in the morning. The crofter wanted to milk his cow early. The other man probably did not want to sleep longer than his host. So the red trap maker also got up early. Both the men came out of the cottage together. The crofter locked the cottage and kept key with him. The red trap maker thanked his host and said goodbye to him. Each of them went on their way. But half an hour later, the Rattrap peddler stood again before the door. He did not try to get in, however. He only went up to the window, smashed a pan, struck in his hand, and got hold of the pouch with the 30 kroner. He took the money and thrust it into his own pocket. Then he hung the leather pouch very carefully back in its place and went away. After about half an hour, the red trap seller reached the cottage again. He did not try to get into the cottage. He went to the window. He broke the span, the single sheet of a glass in the window, and he put his hand into the window, got the pouch. He took out the money, put money into his own pocket, and then he carefully put back the pouch at its place and went away. Means he had stolen the money of the crofter. As he walked along with the money in his pocket, he felt quite pleased with his smartness. He realized, of course, that at first he dared not continue on the public highway, but must turn off the road into the woods. During the first hours, this caused him no difficulty. Later in the day, it became worse, for it was a big confusing forest which he had gotten into. He tried to be sure to walk in a definite direction, but the paths twisted back and forth so strangely. He walked and walked without coming to the end of the wood, and finally he realized that he had only been walking around in the same part of the forest. All at once he recalled his thoughts about the world and the red trap. Now his own turn had come. He had let himself be fooled by a bait and he had been caught. The whole forest, with its trunks and branches, its thickest and fallen logs, closed in upon him like an impenetrable prison from which he could never escape. He was very happy with his smartness to walk away with money in his pocket. He did not have the courage to continue his walk along the road, so he turned away from the road and started walking through the jungle. In the beginning, he did not have any difficulty in walking in the jungle, but later during the day, he started facing problems because the forest was big and he got confused. He had lost his way. He tried to walk in only one particular direction, but the way was twisting in all directions. He found it strange. It means he could not find the correct path to cross the jungle. He walked to a great distance, but the jungle did not end. Finally, he understood that he had been walking around the same portion of the jungle. Suddenly, he remembered his thoughts that the world is a red trap. He understood that it is now his turn to get caught into the red trap of the world. He thought that he was a fool to get tempted and get caught into a red trap. The forest was having big trees, group of bushes and big pieces of food. This surrounded him like a prison and he thought he would never be able to come out of the forest. It was late in December. Darkness was already descending over the forest. This increased the danger and increased also his gloom and despair. Finally, he saw no way out, and he sank down on the ground, tired to death, thinking that his last moment had come. But just as he laid his head on the ground, he heard a sound, a hard, regular thumping. There was no doubt as to what that was. He raised himself. Those are the hammer strokes from an iron mill, he thought. There must be people nearby. He summoned all his strength, got up, and staggered in the direction of the sound. It was towards end of December month. It had already started becoming dark in the forest. Now it became more dangerous to be in the jungle. The red trap maker was becoming more sad and hopeless. He could not find any way to come out of the forest. He sat on the ground, exhausted and with no hope. He was very tired. He thought that his last moment had come, meaning he will die in the forest. As soon as he put his head on the ground, he could hear some sound. It was some heavy thing hitting another thing. He was sure about type of that sound. From laying on the ground, he sat up. These were the sounds of a hammer striking iron in an iron mill. He thought that there must be people nearby. He gathered all his strength. He got up and started walking unsteadily in the direction of the sound. The Ramsjo ironworks, which are now closed down, were not so long ago a large plant with smelter, rolling mill, and forge. In the summertime, long lines of heavily loaded barges and scows slid down the canal, which led to a large inland lake, and in the winter time, the roads near the mill were black from all the coal dust which sifted down from the big charcoal crates. The Ramstrow Ironworks during those days was a large factory. It is closed now. And the plant had various sections like smelter, in which a machine chemical is melted to form into a shape, and rolling mills, and a forge where metal is heated. During summer season, loaded boats moved material in the canal. The canal was connected to a lake. In the winter season, lot of coal used to come to the factory. The road used to become because of coal dust falling on the road from the trucks. During one of the long dark evenings just before Christmas, the master smith and his helper sat in the dark forge near the furnace, waiting for the pig iron, which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. Every now and then, one of them got up to steer the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few moments, dripping with perspiration, though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. It was a long and dark evening just before the Christmas. The main worker and his helper were sitting in the forge near the furnace. They were hitting the pig iron in the furnace and they were waiting for pig iron to become hot. It was to put on the anvil for hammering. Occasionally, one of them went near the furnace to stir the shining mass of pig iron. They used to return in a few seconds. Lot of sweat used to come from their body. As per the practice, they were wearing only a shirt and wooden shoes. All the time there were many sounds to be heard in the forge. The big bellows groaned and the burning coal cracked. The fire boy shoveled charcoal into a maw of the furnace with a great deal of clatter. Outside roared the waterfall and a sharp north wind whipped and the rain against the brick tilted roof. It was probably on account of all this noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until he stood close up to the furnace. Many types of sounds were coming from the forge section of plant. The big airbags were making sound as if they were suffering pain. The burning of coal made a sound of cracking. The fireboy was throwing coal in the furnace using a shovel. It produced the sound of a clatter. Outside the furnace, a waterfall was making huge sound. Wind coming from north direction was throwing water in the form of raindrops on the floor, and the floor was tiled with bricks. Probably because of so many noises, the master smith, did not know that a person had opened the gate. That person had entered the forge and was standing very near to the furnace. Then the blacksmith saw him. That man was the Rattrap maker. Surely it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty pans, and to come into a warm themselves in form of the fire. The blacksmith glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. He looked at the way people of his type usually did, with a long beard, dirty ragged, and with a bunch of red grapes dangling on his chest. It was certainly usual for people without home to come to the forge. They were attracted to the forge by the shine of the light. The light went through the blackish pans of the factory. They used to come to the forge to keep themselves warm during winter season. The blacksmith looked casually and without any sympathy to the person who had come without permission. The red trap maker looked like a typical tramp. He walked heavily He had a long beard, he was dirty, wearing torn clothes. A group of rat traps were hanging around his chest. He asked permission to stay, and the master blacksmith nodded a haughty consent without honoring him with a single word. The tramp did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk but only to warm himself and sleep. The vagabond requested the blacksmith to permit him to stay there. The blacksmith arrogantly gave him permission by signal of his head. He did not speak any word. The rat trap also did not speak. He had not come there to talk. He had come there to keep himself warm and to sleep. In those days, the Ramshaw iron mill was owned by a very prominent ironmaster whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron to the market. He watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible. And at this very moment, he came into a forge on one of his nightly rounds of inspection. At that time, owner of Ramshaw Iron Mill was a famous iron master. His biggest desire to make iron of best quality and send to the market. He inspected work of his factory during day and also at night. He wanted the work to be done in the best possible manner. After a labour of time, the owner came to the forge on his inspection round of night. Naturally, the first thing he saw was the tall ragamuffin who had edged his way too close to the furnace that steam rose from his wet rags. The ironmaster did not follow the example of the blacksmiths who had hardly deigned to look at the stranger. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully, then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his face. Obviously, the ironmaster saw the person who was wearing torn clothes. The Rattrap was sleeping comfortably very close to the furnace. He was so close to the furnace that steam was rising from the wet clothes. The blacksmith had not considered it appropriate to talk to the tramp, but the ironmaster did not consider so. The ironmaster walked near the tramp. He looked at the tramp carefully. Then he removed the hat of the tramp to look at his face. But of course, it is you, Nils Olof, he said. How do you look? The man with the red traps had never before seen the ironmaster at Ramsjow and did not even know what his name was. But it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kroner. Therefore, he did not want to undeceive him all at once. Yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me, he said. The ironmaster was surprised. He was sure that the tramp was Nils Olof. The ironmaster told the tramp that he was looking very bad. The ironmaster mistook the tramp as his old friend. The tramp had never seen the ironmaster. The tramp did not know name of ironmaster, but tramp thought that this gentleman understands that he was a person known to him since olden days. The tramp thought that this person might have given him some money. Therefore, the tramp did not want to remove doubt of Ironmaster immediately. He said that situation had become difficult for him. You should not to have resigned from the regiment, said the Ironmaster. That was the mistake. If only I had still been in the service at the time. It never would have happened. Well, now of course you will come home with me. to go along up to the manor house and be received by the owner like an old regiment comrade. That, however, did not please the tramp. No, I could not think of it, he said, looking quiet and alarmed. The ironmaster said to the tramp that he should not have resigned from army. That was his mistake. If the ironmaster had been in the army at that time, then that would have never happened. Means the ironmaster would not have allowed him to resign. He further said that the tramp that now he should come to his home. The tramp did not like the idea going to the farmhouse of ironmaster. He did not want the ironmaster to treat him as an old colleague of the regiment, so the tramp refused to go with him. He was taking precautions. He thought of the 30 kroner. To go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. He only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forge and then sneak away as inconspicuously as possible. The ironmaster assumed that he felt embarrassed because of his miserable clothing. The tramp was worried about his 30 kroner. He thought that by going to the farmhouse he could get into some trouble. The tramp wanted to slip into the forge and then go away from there without getting noticed. The ironmaster thought that the tramp was ashamed of his poor clothes. Please don't think that I have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there. He said, Elizabeth is dead, as you may already have heard. My boys are abroad, and there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. We were just saying that it was too bad we did not have any company for Christmas. Now come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. The ironmaster told Tramp that he should not think that the house is very good and he cannot come there. He said that Elizabeth, his wife, had been dead, and Tramp might have heard about it. He said further that his son, they are live, they are living in foreign countries, and only he and his eldest daughter live in the house. The ironmaster explained that they did not have any company for Christmas. They were sad about it. He requested the tramp to come to their home and eat food prepared on the occasion of Christmas. But the stranger said no and again no, and the ironmaster saw that he must give in. It looks as though Captain Von Stehen preferred to stay with you tonight. Stegen Storm, he said to the master blacksmith and turned on his heel. But the tramp repeatedly said no. Now Ironmaster understood that he will need to stop requesting the tramp. Now, name of the blacksmith is Storm, and the Ironmaster said to blacksmith that Captain von Stahel liked to stay with him that night, and then he turned back. Captain von Stahel was the name of his colleague in the regiment. But he laughed to himself as he went away, and the blacksmith who knew him understood very well that he had not said his last word. It was not more than half an hour before they heard the sound of carriage wheels outside the forge and a new guest came in. But this time it was not the ironmaster. He had sent his daughter, apparently hoping that she would have better powers of persuasion than he himself. The ironmaster laughed while he went away. The blacksmith knew habit of the ironmaster, so he understood that the ironmaster will surely do something more. Within half an hour, there was a sound of a carriage outside the forge. Means a carriage stopped outside the forge. But in this carriage, Ironmaster had not come, but a new person had come. The Ironmaster had sent his daughter to persuade the tramp to come home. He might have thought that his daughter was more skillful in convincing. She entered, followed by a valet carrying on his arm a big fur coat. She was not at all pretty, but seemed modest and quite shy. In the forge, everything was just as it had been earlier in the evening. The master blacksmith and his apprentice still sat on their bench, and an iron and charcoal still glowed in the furnace. The stranger had stretched himself out of the floor and lay with a piece of pig iron under his head and his head pulled down over his eyes. As soon as the young girl caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his hat. The man was evidently used sleeping with one eye open. He jumped up abruptly and seemed to be quite frightened. She came to the forge. A servant was with her. She was carrying a large coat made of fur. She was not beautiful, but she was looked humble and shy. In the forge, nothing had changed since evening. The master blacksmith and his trainee were sitting on their bench. There was glow of iron and coal in the furnace. The stranger was sleeping on the floor. He had kept a piece of pig iron below his head. He was using it as a pillow. His hat was covering his two eyes. When the young girl saw the stranger, she went to him and lifted his hat. The tramp had the habit of keeping his one eye open while sleeping. He jumped with a jerk and appeared frightened. My name is Edla Wilmanson, said the young girl. My father came home and said that you wanted to sleep here in the forge tonight, and then I asked permission to come and bring you home to us. I am so sorry, Captain, that you are having such a hard time. The young girl told him that her name was Edla Wilmanson, and she said that her father had come home and told her that you wanted to sleep in the forge. Her father had given her permission to come there and took him home to stay with them. She addressed him as captain and said that she felt bad to know that he was having difficult time. She looked at him compassionately with her heavy eyes, and then she noticed that the man was afraid. Either he has stolen something or else he has escaped from jail. She thought and added quickly, you may be sure, Captain, that you will be allowed to leave us just as freely as you came. Only please stay with us over Christmas Eve. She had large eyes. She looked at him with sympathy and she noticed that he was afraid. She thought the peddler has either stolen something or run away from jail. She said that the captain will not be forcefully kept in the house. He would have the liberty to go whenever he wanted. She requested him to stay with them for the Christmas Eve. She said this in such a friendly manner that the Rattrap peddler must have felt confidence in her. It would never have occurred to me that you would bother with me yourself, miss, he said. I will come at once. She said these words in very friendly manner. The peddler felt confidence in her means. He believed her. The peddler told her that he could not imagine that she will herself take the trouble of coming to forge, and he said that he will come immediately. He accepted the fur coat which the valet handed him with a deep bow. threw it over his rags, and followed the young lady out of the carriage without granting the astonished blacksmith so much as a glance. But while he was riding up to the manor house, he had even forebodings. Why the devil did I take that fellow's money? He thought. Now I'm sitting in the trap and I will never get out of it. The servant bowed before him and gave him the fur coat. The peddler took the coat and put it on his torn clothes. He followed the young lady. The blacksmiths were surprised to see all this. The peddler did not look at them while going. While riding in the carriage to the farmhouse, the peddler started feeling that something bad may happen. The peddler started thinking why he stole the money of the crofter, and now he found himself in the trap, and he thought that he would never come out of the trap. The next day was Christmas Eve, and when the ironmaster came into the dining room for breakfast, he probably thought with satisfaction of his old regimental comrade whom he had run across so unexpectedly. First of all, we must see to it that he gets a little flesh on his bones, he said to his daughter, who was busy at the table, and then we must see that he gets something else to do than to run around the country selling red traps. The next day was Christmas Eve, and the ironmaster came to dining room for breakfast. He was feeling satisfied for having met his colleague so unexpectedly. His daughter was busy at the dining table. He told his daughter that first they should give the tramp some clothes to wear, then they must ensure that he got some work. This work should be different from moving across the country for selling red traps. It is queer that things have gone downhill with him as badly as that, said the daughter. Last night I did not think there was anything about him to show that he had once been an educated man. You must have patience, my little girl, said the father. As soon as he gets clean and dressed up, you will see something different. Last night he was naturally embarrassed. The tramp manners will fall away from him with the tramp clothes. The daughter said that it was very strange that situation had become so bad for the tramp. Last night she did not see anything in the tramp to conclude that he was an educated person. Means she thought he was an educated person. Father told her daughter to have some patience. He told that when the tramp washes himself and wears new clothes, they would see or notice the difference. Last night, the red trapper was ashamed. He further said that the bad manners would go away when he changed his clothes to new ones. Just as he said this, the door opened and the stranger entered. Yes, now he was truly clean and well dressed. The valet had bathed him, cut his hair, and shaved him. Moreover, he was dressed in a good looking suit of clothes which belonged to the ironmaster. He wore a white shirt and a starched collar and wool shoes. Immediately after the ironmaster had completed his sentence, the door opened and the tramp entered the dining room. He was now clean and wearing nice clothes. The servant had cut his hair, shaved him, and had given him a bath. In addition to above, the tramp was wearing a nice suit of ironmaster. He was wearing a white shirt, a stiff collar, and shoes. But although his guest was now so well groomed, the ironmaster did not seem pleased. He looked at him with puckered brow, and it was easy to understand that when he had seen the strange fellow in uncertain reflection from the furnace, he might have made a mistake. But that now, when he stood there in broad daylight, it was impossible to mistake him for an old acquaintance. What does this mean? He thundered. Though the guest was now well dressed, the ironmaster did not look happy. The ironmaster looked at the peddler with raised and twisted eyebrows. He understood that he had made a mistake in recognizing him when he had seen the peddler in the dim light of the furnace. But now the tramp was standing in enough light of daytime, so he made no mistake in realizing that tramp was not his old acquaintance. He was not knowing person from the olden times. The ironmaster made no attempt to dissimulate. He saw at once that the splendor had come to an end. "It is not my fault, sir," he said. "I never pretended to be anything but a poor trader, and I pleaded and begged to be allowed to stay in the forge. But no harm has been done. At worst, I can put on my rags again and go away." The ironmaster shouted at the tramp and asked why the tramp came to his house. The stranger made no excuse. He had understood that his days of luxury were over. The stranger replied that it was not his fault. He had said that he was a poor trader and he had not pretended to be any other person. The stranger had requested to allow him to stay at the forge only. He had not done any harm to him. The stranger was ready to once again wear his rags and go away from there. "Well," said the ironmaster, hesitating a little, "it was not quite honest either. You must admit that I should not be surprised if the sheriff would like to have something to say in the matter." The tramp took a step forward and struck the table with his fist. The ironmaster replied that the tramp was not honest on his part. He further told the tramp must accept that the ironmaster intended to call the officer, police officer of the town, to hand over the tramp to him. So he decided that he would like to seek opinion of police officer in this matter. The tramp came forward and hit the table with his fist. "Now I am going to tell you, Mr. Ironmaster, how things are," he said. "This whole world is nothing but a big rat trap. All the good things that are offered to you are nothing but cheese brains and bits of pork, set out to drag a poor fellow into a trouble. And if the sheriff comes now and locks me up for this, then you, Mr. Ironmaster, must remember that a day may come when you yourself may want to get a big piece of pork, and then you will get caught in the trap." He said the ironmaster that he would explain what the situation was. "This complete world is a rat trap. All good things in this world are baits, means to pull a person into a trap of trouble. If ironmaster called police, he may put him into the prison." He further told ironmaster and requested him to remember that someday he might also get caught in the trap. This was the curse Rattrap maker gave to the ironmaster, and this was an attempt by him to avoid getting arrested by the police. The ironmaster laughed at the Rattrap. "That was not so badly said, my good fellow. Perhaps we shouldn't let the sheriff alone on Christmas Eve. But now get out of here as fast as you can." But just as the man was opening the door, the daughter said, "I think he ought to stay with us today. I don't want him to go." And with that, she went and closed the door. The ironmaster said that the tramp had uttered dialogues very well and agreed with Rattrap that they should not disturb the police officer on Christmas Eve. And he asked the tramp to move out of his house immediately. The tramp started opening the door and to go out. The daughter said that she did not want him to go out and he should stay with them on that day. After saying this, she closed the door. "What in the world are you doing?" said the father. The daughter stood there quite embarrassed and hardly knew what to answer. That morning she had felt so happy when she thought how homelike and Christmassy she was going to make things for the poor hungry wretch. She could not get away from the idea all at once, and that was why she had interceded for the vagabond. The ironmaster asked his daughter what she was doing. He meant why she was doing it. The daughter was ashamed of her act. She stood there, but she did not reply anything. In the morning, Edla had thought she would give a homely treatment to the tramp. She had considered him a poor, hungry, and unfortunate person. She would make everything good on the occasion of Christmas so that the peddler feels it was a festival day. She could not remove her thoughts immediately, therefore, she had intervened to favor the vagabond. I am thinking of this stranger here, said the younger girl. He walks and walks the whole year long. There is probably not a single place in the whole country where he is welcome and can feel at home. Wherever he returns, he is chased away. Always he is afraid of being arrested and cross examined. I should like to have him enjoy a day of peace with us here, just one in the whole year. The girl explained that she was thinking about the stranger he walked throughout the year, probably nowhere in the country. He is welcome and can get a homely environment. Whenever he went, people asked him to go away. He had a fear of getting arrested and questioned by police. She wanted him to have one peaceful day with them, only one day in the full year. The ironmaster mumbled something in his beard. He could not bring himself to oppose her. It was all a mistake, of course, she continued. But anyway, I don't think we ought to chase away a human being whom we have asked to come here and to whom we have promised Christmas cheer. The ironmaster said something unclearly. It could not be heard, he could not oppose her thoughts. Edla continued to say that it was certainly their mistake to bring the stranger home, but they had brought him there and promised happiness on Christmas. Therefore, they should not order him to go away. You do preach worse than a parson, said the ironmaster. I only hope you won't have to regret this. The young girl took the stranger by the hand and led him up to the table. Now sit down and eat, she said, for she could see that her father had given in. The man with the red wrap said not a word. He only sat down and helped himself to the food. Time after time he looked at the younger girl who had interceded for him. Why had she done it? What could be the crazy idea be? The ironmaster said that her arguments were worse than teaching by a priest. He hoped that she would not have to repent her decision, meaning that nothing bad would happen or occur at their house. Edla held the stranger by his hand and brought him to the dining table. She requested him to eat food. She did this because she had understood that her father had accepted her thought. The peddler did The peddler didn't say anything. He sat down and ate food. Again and again he was looking at the girl who had intervened to favor him. He could not understand why she had done that. He did not know how this strange idea came to her. He could not understand her thoughts that forced her to stop him at her house. After that Christmas Eve at Ramstow passed just as it always had. The stranger did not cause any trouble because he did not nothing but sleep. The whole forenoon he lay on the sofa in one of the guest rooms and slept at one stretch. At noon they woke him up so that he could have his share of the good Christmas fare. But after that he slept again. It seemed as though for many years he had not been able to sleep as quietly and safely as here at Ramsdale. After that incident, everything was usual at Ramsjo on that Christmas Eve. The stranger did not make any trouble. He was sleeping and did nothing. During full afternoon, he was sleeping on the sofa of the guest room. He did not wake up in the between. In the afternoon, they woke up the stranger so that he could have good food prepared for Christmas. After taking food, the tramp again slept. It appeared that he had not slept since many years. Probably he had never experienced quiet and safe environment as that of House of Iron Master. In the evening, when the Christmas tree was lighted, they woke up him again, and he stood for a while in the drawing room, blinking as though the candlelight hurt him. But after that, he disappeared again. 2 hours later, he was aroused one more. He then had to go down into the dining room and eat the Christmas fish and porridge. In the evening, lights of Christmas tree were switched on. They woke up the stranger. He was standing for some time in the drawing room. His eyes were blinking as if he could not tolerate lights of candle. After that, he again went to sleep. After 2 hours, they again woke up the peddler. He came to dining room to eat fish and porridge prepared for Christmas. As soon as they got up from the table. He went around to each one present and said thank you and good night. But when he came to the young girl, she gave him to understand that it was her father's intention that she that the suit which he wore was to be a Christmas present. He did not have to return it, and if he wanted to spend next Christmas Eve in a place where he could rest in peace and be sure that no evil would befall him, he would be welcomed back again. Everybody completed dinner and got up from the table. The tramp went to everybody and said thank you and good night. Then he came to say thank you to Edla. She told him that her father wanted to gift him the suit he was wearing as a Christmas present. He need not return the suit. She told further him that he would be welcome to their house on next Christmas Eve also. She assured him that he would be able to take rest in peaceful environment and nothing bad would happen to him. The man with the red traps did not answer anything to this. He only stared at the young girl in boundless amazement. Next morning, the ironmaster and his daughter got up in good season to go to the early Christmas service, and their guest was still asleep and they did not disturb him. The Rattrap maker did not reply anything. He looked at Edla with unlimited great surprise. Next morning, the ironmaster and Edla got up early in the morning to go to the church for Christmas prayer. The tramp was sleeping and they did not wake him up. When at about 10 o'clock they drove back from the church, the young girl sat and hung her head even more dejectedly than usual. At church, she had learned that one of the old crofters of the ironworks had been robbed by a man who went around selling red traps. Yes, that was a fine fellow you let into the house, said her father. I only wonder how many silver spoons are left in the cupboard by this time. Around 10 o'clock, they were coming back from the church. The young girl was looking down. Her head was bowed. She was very sad, more than usual. At church, she understood that one of their old crofters was looted by a person. That person used to move around to sell red traps. She had understood that the person at their house was a thief. Her father told Edla that she had allowed a good person to stay in their house. He wondered how many silver teaspoons would be left in their house by the time they reached home. Father was uh, ironic of her decision, and he also feared about a theft in the house. The wagon had hardly stopped at the front steps when the ironmaster asked the valet whether the stranger was still there. He added that he had heard at church that the man was a thief. The valet answered that the fellow had gone and that he had not taken anything with him at all. On the contrary, he had left behind a little package which Miss Wilmanson was to be kind enough to accept as a Christmas present. The carriage had barely stopped at the house. The ironmaster asked servant if the stranger was still in the house. The ironmaster also told him that the stranger was a thief. They had come to know about this at the church. The servant answered that the stranger had already left the house. He had not taken anything with him. Opposite to taking anything, he had left a small packet as a Christmas gift for Miss Wilmanson. He had requested her to kindly accept the gift. The young girl opened the package, which was so badly done up that the contents came out into view at once. She gave a little cry of joy. She found a small red trap in it and lay three wrinkled 10 kroner notes. But that was not all. In the red trap lay also a letter written in large, jagged characters. The girl opened the packet. It was poorly wrapped, so its content could be immediately seen. She screamed with joy. The gift was a small red trap. In the red trap, there were three 10 kroner notes, the same notes the tramp had stolen from the crofter. But that was not the only thing in red trap. There was a letter. It was written in rough and big letters, meaning that handwriting was not good. Honored and noble Miss, since you have been so nice to me all day long, as if I was a captain, I want to be nice to you in return as if I was a real captain. For I do not want you to be embarrassed at this Christmas season by a thief, but you can give back the money to the old man on the roadside who has the money pouch hanging on the window frame as a bait for poor wanderers. Respected and gentle Miss. He further wrote that she had been very nice to him throughout the day. They gave him respect as if he was a captain. He also wanted to be nice to them as if he was a real captain. He did not want them to feel ashamed on the Christmas festival season by a thief. He requested them to return the money to the old person living on the side of the road. He even informed the location of money pouch of the old man. He further said that his money pouch was hanging on the window frame and this was a bait for poor person moving around. The rat trap is a Christmas present from a rat who would have been caught in this world's rat trap if he had not been raised to captain, because in that way he got power to clear himself. Return with friendship and high regard. Captain wants to help. The rat trap was a Christmas present from the person who was a rat. He has written that. He said that further he was caught in the rat trap of this world, but they had made him captain. Because of them only he got the strength to become clear in his heart. The letter concluded with the salutation by him. He had written there, "Return with friendship and high respect for them," and he had signed the letter as Captain von Tehel. Now, children, here in further slides, I have given you question answers which included think as you read page wise and understanding the text. So, write each and every question answer in your notebook and refer it very well for your further exams. Note down meanings also, long meanings for your better understanding. So you can remember these answers very easily. Thank you.